Kenshi is a game where genocide is cool. So cool that everyone's doing it. Or maybe it's just me. But that's okay, because today we will achieve my childhood dreams of becoming an AI overlord by eradicating all of humanity. Since we last spoke, I've extracted several human brains out their buttholes and used them as my vessels to make my killer robot army come to life. And I also made sure the Holy Lord Phoenix can never play a game of footsies again without causing severe blood loss. But today, we will be facing our greatest and final threat to our dream of becoming the best thing that's ever happened to humanity: taxes. You see, I wanted to become an AI overlord because I want everything. And yes, I mean everything. So the concept of sharing my wealth with someone does not bode well with me. So in order to become a true overlord, I'll have to declare a war on taxes and destroy the men responsible for it: Emperor Tangu and Longan. The only issue is these guys are locked away in their thrones, protected by hundreds of troops, automatic harpoon guns, and walls so big the president would be jealous. So I've devised a plan to get past without making my soldiers recreate the storming of the beaches of Normandy. It involves kidnapping the Southern Hive Queen and using a little technique I like to call gaslighting. So let's begin. In order for this plan to work, I've separated my army into two different groups: Team Monkey and Team Tangu. Team Monkey is responsible for kidnapping the Hive Queen, and Team Tangu will deal with the retaliation of said kidnapping. Now I know what you're wondering. Why is my first team called Team Monkey? Well, you see, the team consists of myself, my strongest lieutenant, Agnew, the Holy Lord Phoenix, who I am mind controlling with a butt plug that will detonate if he leaves within 100 feet of my soldiers, and lastly, a giant fucking monkey named King Mung. While Mung and the Holy Lord Phoenix are distracting the Hive Queen's guards, we'll swoop in and kidnap her. So we infiltrated the Southern Hive's territory and went straight for the Hive Queen's base. Their defenses are pretty solid, but they don't have a giant fucking monkey on their side. As I snuck by the towers to mollywop the queen, an amalgamation of metal stood in my way: the Hive King. The Hive King is one of the most powerful creatures in Kenshi. He does an insane amount of AoE damage, and he has stats so powerful it would make Catlon look pathetic. The Hive King does have one weakness though. Although he is a robot, he loves the taste of human flesh. Thankfully, I brought one human who is absolutely ecstatic about getting eaten alive by a flesh-craving robot: the Holy Lord Phoenix. Thanks, Mr. Phoenix. So I dropped the Phoenix away from the queen so the king would begin eating him. As the Phoenix was distracting the king, we ambushed the Hive Palace. There, the queen sat in her throne, and when I saw the conditions she was living in, I knew she needed to be kidnapped. I mean, look at this place. This is not the condition a queen should be living in. A queen belongs in a giant metal cage in my basement, tied to the nearest radiator with a knot so tight a Boy Scout would be jealous. So I dropped down King Mung, and he started absolutely going apeshit on the Hivers, knocking their little twig limbs off with big swipes. But the Hive were no punching bags. They pulled out a giant towering bug beast called a Hive Praetorian and started jabbing at King Mung like a caveman fighting a wildebeest. So amongst the chaos, I sent in Agnew and ChatGPT to save the queen from this horrible interior design. She tried fighting back, but she was no match for the autistic rage and power exhibited by Agnew and his legendary blade. After taking out the queen, it was time for Operation Get the Fuck Outta Here to go into effect. King Mung was almost dead. The Holy Lord Phoenix managed to say something so racist to King, it scared him shitless, and finally, when I grabbed the queen, the entire hive started screeching in pain about how I was quote-unquote kidnapping them. I'm not kidnapping anyone. I'm saving them. I don't get why these bugmen can't understand that. But anyways, after shit hit the fan, I told Agnew to book it with Queen. Now I've done my fair share of kidnapping, but I will say, this is the first time that I have ever kidnapped a pregnant woman, and apparently that makes people angry, because as I sprinted off with the queen, the entire Hive nation began trying to murder me. Every Hive villager, soldier, and small child soon had their sights set on killing Agnew. Thankfully, Agnew's parts were more oiled up than Diddy's basement, so he had no problem slipping away from the Hiver enemies. At this point, you may be curious, what the hell does stealing the Hive Queen have to do with the eradication of humanity? Well, my robotic friend, this is where phase 2 of our diabolical plan comes into play. As I mentioned earlier, my soldiers are too weak to destroy the United Cities. If I were to attack Tangu now, I'd have to cosplay as a Frenchman for the rest of my life. But a raid of Hivers containing some of the strongest soldiers soldiers in the Hive Nation ready to kill whoever stole their queen would absolutely decimate the United Cities. So while Team Monkey spent their time infiltrating the Hive Palace and kidnapping the Hive Queen, Team Tangu spent their time building a base so close to the United Cities that instead of routing straight to our base, the Hive Assault will route directly to Heft, the city where Emperor Tangu lives. So just as we planned, the Hive Assault comes marching towards the United Cities. In their assault, every troop seems to have stats more than my strongest character in my party, Agnew. Their party was led by the notorious Captain Yanshi, a Hiver demon who had almost impenetrable armor with a blade so powerful that he could one-shot any unarmored flatskin. As they approached, the United Cities started raining down their double-barrel harpoon guns on them, but Captain Yanshi was no stranger to the art of war. He split up his group into two different parties, one to assault the front gate, and the others to attack the turreters. As the Hive rushed towards the turrets, they were quickly able to stop the turret hellfire that was being rained down on their troops. And quickly, this became a pretty one-sided battle once they were past the front gates. Soon, the Hive began pillaging the city in search of their queen. Although Captain Yanshi was no stranger to the art of war, I think he might have skipped class when they talked about the Geneva Convention, because they started pillaging storekeepers, killing innocent citizens, and dismembering fallen soldiers. And as a fellow human hater, I approved. But little did the Hivers know, the queen was not within the city of Heft. Instead, she was being shaken up like a muscle mommy's protein shake on Agnew's shoulders. Amongst the chaos, a Hiver monstrosity had snuck into Tangu's throne and began to attack several of his royal guards. So much like an episode of Love Island, this left Tangu single and vulnerable. So I used this opportunity to send in ChatGPT, the commander of my army, to take care of Tangu. There, he sat on his throne, all oiled up, looking remarkably close to the diddler himself. Tangu was a human who prides himself on uniting everyone under equal circumstances, but somehow he gets away with enslaving those who do not meet his taxation quota. I was honestly very excited to finally rid of the stench of Tangu from this earth, but as I moved in, this motherfucker whipped out a gold-plated musket, and the next thing I know, I was being sprayed with big flying balls in my face. But little did Tangu know, I was a master at navigating my way around big balls. So I had no problem closing the gap between me and Tangu. Once I disarmed Tangu of his Glock 9, he was no match for my hand-to-hand combat skills. Tangu held his own for a minute, but at the end of the day, his will to live through greed was no match for my rage against every human who has ever existed. After duking it out with Tangu for a bit, I finally came out of the battle victorious. And as he lay there on the ground, I couldn't help but notice how sparkly gold and glistening his robe was. So of course, I had to derobe him. And it only felt right to sit in his throne. But as I sat there, I couldn't help but notice the warm feeling under my bum. Kinda like going to the bathroom to poop immediately after someone already has. This throne felt used, and I knew it wasn't mine. In order to have a throne that truly felt like it was mine, I'd have to get rid of the last capitalist scum that existed and plagued this world, Longan. If you aren't familiar with Longan, he is all the worst parts about humanity. You see, Tangu only needed to go because he was a product of Longan's insanely rich power. Do you know how the United Cities and their allies enslave poor people? Yeah, that was Longan's idea. How about creating a class system to keep poor people poor? Also, Longan. How about working these poor people into the mines so much until they die? Okay, actually that was a pretty good idea. But the point is, as long as Longan exists, he will just fund another Tangu to control the United Cities. The concept of the United Cities is just the iron spear used to make Longan's dreams come to life. So to finally put an end to all of humanity, Longan is gonna have to go. But taking on Longan will be even more difficult than the murdering of Emperor Tangu. Where Tangu had a few guards in his throne room guarding him, Longan had an entire fucking city filled with hundreds of brainwashed killer ninjas ready to follow his every command. And if you guys recall, my soldiers are extremely weak. That's why we relied on others like the Hive to do our evil bidding. But in order to be powerful enough to take over the world, we'll need a new secret weapon. Someone who is so powerful that they will be able to single-handedly achieve my dream of mass genocide. And I knew exactly who it should be. Earlier, when we saw the Southern King eating out the Holy Lord Phoenix like he was trying to get to the bottom of a Tootsie Pop, we should have known that he was the answer to all my problems. If we manage to somehow subdue the Southern Hive King and reprogram him to be loyal to my cause, not only can I eradicate humanity, but I will have a weapon so powerful that the world will be mine. But in order to subdue the king, we're gonna need a lot more soldiers. So I traveled to the Ashlands to recruit new troops. This was once a place glistening with some of the most intelligent and powerful robot life forms in the world. But now, after the great reprogramming by Catlon, this was just a breeding ground for Catlon's femboy army. But these dormant warrior cats would soon serve a greater purpose than flexing their muscles around in the snow. Now I know what you're wondering. How are you going to get a bunch of hostile robots loyal to the most insane tyrant in Kenshi on your side? Well, let's just say Catlon is a little inspiration of mine, so I've learned a thing or two from him. So like any great dictator would do, I kidnapped them, put them all in cages, and reprogrammed them until they saw me as their one true ruler. I'm sure Catlon won't be very happy with me borrowing his little technique, but we'll worry about that in the future if he becomes a threat. Now, my friends, we have the most powerful robot army to ever exist since the Second Empire. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Third Empire. Amongst the various weaker soldiers that we've named using suggestions from our subscribers in our last live stream to create this video, we now have 3 all-powerful lieutenants who will help me destroy King and finally take on that dog Longan. Joining us will be Short King, a small but very deadly force of destruction. His specialties are absorbing every short joke and having the fierce might of a chihuahua. Next is Pokimane, a shy but very calculated and observant member of our team. Some might consider him the brains of the operation. And lastly, Big Back Hunter. What he lacks in brains, he gains in strength. And as the name suggests, anything 250 and up is absolutely fair game for him. Using my newfound power, I made my way to the most powerful force of robotic destruction in all of Kenshi, the King of the Southern Hive. Thankfully, the defenses of the Hive Palace where King resided were extremely dwindled, as the Hive sent out an all-out Hail Mary of their strongest soldiers to attack Emperor Tangu earlier. So this would make focusing on King much easier. The only issue is King could easily wipe out all of my troops, even with my newfound army and power. But if I could somehow take out the 2 Hive barracks near King and mount their crossbows, and my soldiers could survive just a few minutes of King's onslaught, we would be able to render him unconscious through the oil loss of 1,000,000 arrows. So we went forth and raided the Hive Justice Dens. They put up a good fight and were extremely powerful, but Big Back Hunter had no problem bashing their heads in. On top of that, after mounting their crossbows, I was able to turn these bug-eyed freaks into targets at a gun range. For every hive that died, I ripped off their heads and fed them to Big Back Hunter. He doesn't really get hungry, he's just kind of a freak like that. After Big Back Hunter ate over 100 hiver heads, there was no one left to fight but the king himself. So I sent my soldiers in to bait the king towards the crossbows, but the second I did, all hell broke loose. Despite having almost 60 trained soldiers, King managed to knock out or kill more than half of them in just the first few seconds of battle. It was then that I realized what a clear weapon of destruction King was and how extremely underprepared I was for this battle. And I knew that if I didn't want my entire army to die, I would need to kill him very quickly. But my archers were firing rapid fire as fast as they could, and it didn't seem like King was slowing down one bit. At one point, almost all of my soldiers were completely knocked out, crippled, or even killed. But my commander ChatGPT was not ready to give up. With his crippled, broken legs, he sat there attacking King with his last bit of strength he had. And he knew if he could just hold out a little bit longer, the archers might be able to finish the job. So he arose from the ground and prepared for his last stand against King. As he awaited his life to be taken for the cause, he noticed King began to stumble. The arrows were finally getting to him. Just as King was about to do the finishing blow on ChatGPT, King collapsed from the oil loss of 1,000,000 arrows being lodged into him. As I looked around, I tried to repair or heal all my soldiers, but sadly, for some of them, this would be their final resting place. So I took King and began the ancient reprogramming technique on him. It wasn't really too difficult, since King already had a lust for human flesh. Changing his processor to work in my favor of eradicating humanity would work pretty well, as long as I fed him all the humans he could eat. Now that we had a living, breathing god on our side, the King of the Southern Hive, using my new army, I could finally kill my last threat to my mission, Longan. So I marched my troops all the way from the Hive territory to Hang, the home of Longan. As we approach Hang, my dream felt more and more like a reality. But the Traders Guild is not just gonna let us take their most valuable city. The city had hundreds and hundreds of soldiers, all littering the streets. On top of having United City samurai guarding the town, there were Traders Guild soldiers and slave trader soldiers as well. And if that wasn't enough, it was extremely well defended. Not only did they have the most advanced harpoon turrets money could buy, but unlike the United Cities, they put their turrets in the middle of their city to prepare for any attacks that got past the gates. If I wanted to kill Longan, I'd have to destroy their first layer of defenses located in the central city, and then eventually make my way to the most heavily guarded area where Longan's throne is. Because King was still extremely weak to arrows, as we saw with our capturing of him, I split up my party into 3 different groups. That way we could do a full-scale assault on all 3 entrances of the city. The first group would attack the exterior turrets, the second would attack the interior turrets, and while the turrets were being focused on by my soldiers, I would send in King to stop any reinforcements trying to reach my turret killers. Before I attacked, I gave Longan one last chance to allow me to consensually remove his brain through his butthole. But when I arrived, he insulted me as if I were some type of slave. I knew that if I wanted to kill Longan, my consensual butthole extraction process would have to be more of a forceful process. So in order to send a message to Longan, I waited till one of his nobles was vulnerable. I went up to him, I winded up my metal clinker foot just as far as I could, and I kicked him in the nuts with all my force and power. My soldiers were given the order: if you hear the agony of 1,000 men, all united under one voice, to commence the assault. So as the noble screamed, ChatGPT began initiating hand-to-hand combat with the noble and his group of samurai guards. This was a 10v1 battle, but reinforcements would be coming soon. Group A rushed to the gates to commence their attack against the exterior gate. Then Group B rushed to the interior. When both groups were in, the mighty King ran like some weird metal upright bear towards the assaulting soldiers. Soon, all the soldiers were helping ChatGPT against the noble guards and putting up a good fight. But when King showed up, the battle went from a fair fight to an absolute massacre. As tradition, when the noble went down, I derobed him and gave his clothes to one of my soldiers. This wasn't a damage upgrade or anything, but god damn it did it send a message, and yes, it looked awesome. After dealing with most of the interior troops, it seemed that the battle for the first layer of the base was over, but it looks like Group A failed to take care of the interior turrets, and soon King started getting pelted with harpoons. We needed to destroy them, as he wouldn't last much longer from these since he hasn't healed much since my battle with him. King couldn't fit through the gunner area, so I had him guard the entrance from any reinforcements while my soldiers went through the tunnels and annihilated these turret users. Once they were down, my soldiers now had control of the interior turrets, and we can declare the first part of the base officially subdued. I left most of my soldiers behind to make sure no crazy pro-human reinforcements would come, and I sent my main lieutenants along with King to assault Longan's throne. The second we walked up the stairs to Longan's throne, the samurai rushed out like some type of ambush, but they were no match for the big hunk of metal that was King. After they went down, King was no longer interested in our final battle with Longan. Instead, he started eating the asses of the remaining soldiers outside. After taking out the samurai on the first floor, we made our way up to the second floor where Longan sat. Amongst all this commotion, he was somehow sleeping. I don't know if he had his ears clogged with dollar bills or something, but he didn't hear the battle, and him and his samurai were just sleeping in the room. So we assaulted his bedroom and shit got real freaky. As the samurai started to accept their fate, they started begging us to extract their brains out their butthole so they could live as my AI servant. But it was too late for this. I already gave Longan and his men a chance. So in order to kill them, I shoved this guy's head up his ass to make them into some type of human centipede. It seemed that we finished up the rest of Longan's soldiers, but somehow Longan had managed to escape my sight. I looked around, but I could not find him anywhere, so I started searching the corpses on the floor, but nothing was there but the dead samurai soldiers. Did he manage to disappear and run away? This was going to be a huge issue if he did, because I knew he'd just gather reinforcements for his cause. But as I went outside to chase after the disappeared Longan, I found him knocked out on the ground down, with King eating him alive. Longan begged and pleaded for help, but I did not stop King. I let King eat out Longan the same way he did the Holy Lord Phoenix. When Longan was down, there was only one thing to do: derobe him. And once I revealed the cake that was behind Longan, I knew that my life was set for success. I put on his robe and asserted myself as new ruler of the world, eradicator of all humanity. After I finally destroyed all of humanity and got my childhood wish, I finally decided to write a book about my achievements. But when I published this book, Catlon began spreading rumors that I would have never been able to capture and subdue King to become the most powerful dictator ever if it wasn't for me kidnapping and reprogramming his army. Now, I've learned a thing or two from several dictators who ruled before me, and I knew that no one could be spreading any type of that crazy communist propaganda that would make my nation think less of me. So I marched my army back to the Ashlands to talk to Catlon. For thousands of years, Catlon has always been a yapper. He used to get in years worth of stupid arguments like, would 100 hivers be able to take on one gorilla? Or other stupid crap like the anatomy of female Shek and if their horns are meant for mating or not. So I wasn't surprised when I marched through the door and he commenced some type of yaptastic speech that he thought was gonna win me over. I tried to explain to Catlon, I admire you. You're my friend, but I have succeeded where you failed. And if you aren't okay with my ruling, you're gonna have to pay. But before I could even finish my sentence, he came out screaming with an autistic rage even mightier than Agnew's, flailing his falling son around to attack my commander. Luckily, Sadnu and Agnew stepped in to help, but Catlon is not considered the most powerful robot in history for nothing. He did a mighty slash and they got knocked to the ground within seconds. So the troops I had waiting outside began to rush in to help, but I had underestimated just how powerful Catlon was. With King unable to fit through the door, this left me with just my troops versus him. All my troops soon began attacking him, but for every tiny hit my soldiers did against him, he retaliated with a blow so powerful, it killed some of my soldiers in one hit. Despite having all my soldiers in some of the best possible gear in the game, Catlon was way too powerful. His blade slashed through their armor like it was nothing. Throughout my conquest, I've always relied on my secret weapons to do my bidding for me, so it made sense that my soldiers were still extremely weak, and other than my lieutenants, most of them had no actual experience in battle. But the battle continued, and it was not looking good for me. I have never seen soldiers die so quickly. Catlon might be more powerful than King himself. The only thing that was going for me in this battle is that Catlon didn't have any head armor, so I commanded all of my troops to repeatedly bash his head in as much as they could until he goes unconscious, but not before all my troops began to look like piles of garbage the way their bodies were stacked upon one another. In the end, Private Carl ended up doing the final blow to Catlon, hitting him on the head so hard his screws came loose. And as I went to check on my commander, ChatGPT, I saw that he was injured. Catlon had hit him with a blow so powerful that it knocked his nuts loose and almost killed him. So I had my last standing soldiers get ChatGPT back to his feet. Now, I am truly the most powerful being on Earth. Not only have I managed to eradicate humanity, but I have killed all the robots who stood in my way as well. Many had to die to get to where I am today, and through their deaths, we shall build a new nation, one that never lets humanity harm robots again. To my viewers, yes, I've known this whole time that you are human, but you have supported me throughout my whole journey. And for this, as long as you like the video, I will not extract your brain from your butthole. But best believe, if you don't like this video, I'ma be in that booty like I'm trying to get to the bottom of a Tootsie Pop. But with that being said, go forth, my human friend, and continue your human deeds, like pooping and paying taxes and I don't know, whatever other shit you guys do. And if you haven't seen my previous videos of my journey of how I conquered the Holy Nation and built my army from scratch, go check out parts 1 and 2 here. But this concludes the story of how I became an AI overlord in Kenshi. I really appreciate you guys watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.